Ladies, gentlemen, and Vault Hunters of all ages, Borderlands 4 is right around the corner. And as someone who has been a fan of this series since the first game released in 2009, I'm pretty excited. I played through the whole first game in co-op in the same room as my brother, which is like a proper core memory to my entire existence as a human being, and so this series does mean a fair bit to me. The incredibly unique art style, the over-the-top characters in the best way possible, explosions! The adrenaline-pumping gameplay with dopamine-hit loot drops, the first true looter-shooter game ever made, the start of a genre, and it has stuck with me as one of my favorite game series ever made ever since. And so today I want to just go over everything important that we know so far about Borderlands 4, releasing September 12th, and I'll try to keep comparisons to previous games minimal so it makes more sense for any brand new players to the series. The story for this game takes place on Kairos, a brand new planet. Most of the previous games took place on the planet of Pandora, but at the end of Borderlands 3, the spoiler-free version of describing it is now the moon that used to be orbiting Pandora was teleported to what was thought to be an empty section of space, but instead impacted the protective barrier that was surrounding Kairos. This planet was completely hidden by the barrier until this happened by the main antagonist of the game, known as the Timekeeper. The veil that was crushed by Pandora's moon was also protecting the planet from this violent constant meteor shower that we see in the initial teaser trailer, and with the barrier shattered, the planet will fall into chaos, just the way that we Vault Hunters like it. On that note, there's been the note that the story in this game will be much more heavily focused on the Vault Hunters themselves, to make it feel a bit more personal, a bit more immersive, and make us feel more impactful, so we will be the lever that causes change and causes destruction. From what we've seen so far, there seems to be multiple factions, and none of them are really our friends, at least not from the beginning. These are the Timekeepers faction, known as the Order. They're the sort of authority that uses cybernetic implants to control larger population centers around the planet. The story takes place 6 years after Elpis, which is Pandora's moon, first phased here and put a hole in their barrier. In that time, people have started to break free from this control, resistances have formed, and one of the other main factions contains a bunch of psychos that are the way they are because they managed to rip out their own implants and free themselves from the control of the Order, at the cost of maybe also ripping out some chunks of their own brains too. This faction is known as the Rippers, lots of cybernetic prosthetics, stuff like that, a much higher technology version of psychos than the kind that we've dealt with in previous Borderlands games. Though they've always had some connection with technology because they definitely knew about trains.
She's the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. Tell her she's as gorgeous as 1,000 sunsets. Tell her you need her help. Tell her to rescue you and care for you, and whatever you do, do not scream the word poop at the top of your lungs. I'm the conductor of the poop train!
From the story trailer, it seems we will start the game being persuaded or even fully controlled by the Timekeeper and the Order, and then we break free with the help of the Rippers. Aside from the Timekeeper himself, we also see the leader of the Rippers as well, who looks gnarly as hell, and we also see this secondary Order faction antagonist called Idolator Soul. He has probably the silliest little head possible for his giant body. His proportions are just incredible, honestly. And currently there are 4 major zones on the planet. The Fade Fields, which are a beautiful false utopia headed up by Idolator Soul. Carcadia Burn, which is the desert-type biome where the Rippers call home. Terminus Range is an icy mountain range with a forced mining operation ran by this big purple guy that has way too many hands, and he's called Vile Lictor. Looking forward to killing him so that he can exit my nightmares as soon as possible. Then the final zone is called Dominion, the main capital city of the planet, headed up by the Timekeeper himself. A large amount of the characters in this game are going to be brand new to the series, with part of the idea being that this should be a really good jumping off point for any new players who haven't played previous Borderlands games. But for those who are familiar with the previous games, a few of the returning characters we've had confirmed so far are of course Claptrap himself, he's gotta be in every one, Moxxi, Zane, and then also Amara. Mechanically speaking, we have a fair few views at some big, mean, nasty-looking boss-style enemies too, some big crazy beasties, and from what the developers have said, the bosses should have some more proper mechanics to them to make them interesting in ways more than just like weak spots and elemental weaknesses. We've got a bunch of new movement technology going on for every character as well. There is a glide function to augment your aerial movement, on top of which there is also a dash function for a burst of movement. There's double jumps for every character, there is clambering up walls, a pretty massive distance, and there's also the grappling hook that you'll likely have seen in some trailers, to which it looks like a lot of fun, honestly, and they've even teased a swimming animation, so they've even added actual water traversal too. Overall, movement has been completely revamped from previous games in this series, and the pace of the game should be the fastest of any so far as a result. And to drive that home, you can even summon your own personal vehicle at any time in open areas, so no more need to catch a ride because you've already got one stored in your back pocket. One of the big important things in Borderlands is, of course, the guns. And one of the things that makes them special is that every gun's manufacturer has a massive effect on how the gun will feel. In Borderlands 4, there are specifically 8 of these gun manufacturers. Jakobs is all about precision and crits and stuff like that. Maliwan is all in on elemental type damage, specifically great for Sirens especially. Vladof, which are all about large magazines and high recoil. Tidior, which is one of my personal long-term favorites, essentially just turns your guns into grenades that you throw whenever you reload. Torgue gives you explosive ammo on your shots, and then there's the Order manufacturer, a new one now, which are based around charged shot functions. The Rippers have their own guns, which are essentially Gatling guns. They spin up to reach their maximum fire rate, and then they stay at that fire rate until you stop shooting. Then there is Daedalus, another new manufacturer, and this one is described as being an extremely dependable all-rounder weapon type that spans all weapon types, and can even use multiple different ammo types, which is the main hook for them. However, this goes even deeper because every part of a gun can be from a separate manufacturer, which then mixes the archetypes of these different options. The main example that we were shown is this gun with 4 separate parts, but we're also told that higher rarity guns can have even more random parts. That said, this example gun shoots explosive elemental shots at a high fire rate due to all the mixed parts involved, and that's just the base function of the weapon itself, because they also have a lot more going on under the hood too, with things like alternate fire modes or underbarrel attachments. The developers have put in a big effort to shift power more so that all of the weapons feel good. Even the lower rarity drops are interesting to use and fun and exciting, which also then allows them to make things like legendary drops much rarer to find, so that there is a much larger moment of excitement when it actually happens, and so the legendaries are just much more meaningful in the game to begin with. To mix with this then, they've replaced the old artifact system from your equipment with an enhancement slot. These are directly tied to the different weapon manufacturers and give guns that have at least one part from that manufacturer a significant unique bonus tied to the enhancement. There's another new specific equipment slot which is called Ordinance. This is specifically for big, hefty, fun weapons like full-on rocket launchers or like a mobile anti-air rifle that you can hold in your hands, and importantly they've made these much more frequently usable, as now instead of having limited ammo, these Ordinance type weapons specifically have a cooldown on them. This means that you can use them whenever you want and then be able to have them back before any important fights because you just gotta wait for the cooldown, rather than the old way of just sitting around with all of your high value ammo in your back pocket because you didn't know when you were about to fight and you wanted to save it for the important moments. And this is an awesome change in my opinion. Like previous games in the series, this game will have couch co-op on consoles, and a really cool function that is quite unique among co-op experiences. Borderlands 4 will let each player set their own difficulty setting individually. Meaning if you are playing with others, maybe one of your party members likes the challenge of something tougher, one of you just likes being there for the experience but struggles a bit. You can both have your own gameplay tailored to your own individual preferences without affecting the other player's experience, at least not a whole lot. There will also be a bit more of a focus on exploration in the open world. There are missions that aren't quests that you have to pick up from a character or a quest board, but instead are just things that you will naturally wander into that automatically start an event that you can then follow. And importantly, they've also added a feature that allows for full and easy mission and boss replaying, with the boss replay part of that especially being a really big deal for any grinding you want to do for specific bits of equipment, which is honestly a really big part of the identity of Borderlands as a series. That's pretty much everything I want to talk about surrounding the game in a more generalized fashion, but then we also have the Vault Hunters. The big thing at the core of the series as a whole is the Vault Hunters. This is the term used for the player characters, and to simplify it, think of us like post-apocalyptic pirates. Every Vault Hunter has their own unique playstyle, mostly dictated through their passive trait, which is a constant for each of the characters, then also the skill trees and the action skills that are tied to them that you can choose between. Every Vault Hunter has 3 active skills that they can choose from, but you can only have 1 in use at any given time. These are active skills that you can use on a cooldown timer to augment the situation in various ways, as opposed to the myriad of passive skill stat increases that you will find in the skill trees found within the game too, which we have seen a fair few of so far. And this is honestly looking to be the most robust skill tree system in Borderlands to date, with things like augments in the skill tree to completely change how your gameplay works, either with your action skill itself totally shifting, or just your character as a whole. There's also capstone skills, which also do the same thing, but to an even larger degree. That said, there is also a ton of depth to all of this, and if you guys want to see full breakdowns for each character, let us know in the comments. But for now, I just want to go over the general overview, the main archetype of each skill tree for each character, and some exciting things from later in these skill trees that can fully change how they work. That said, let's go through the basics of what we know for each Vault Hunter individually. As per usual with the series, we will have 4 Vault Hunters at launch, and expect to see 2 more added in as DLC post-release. First up, Vex is the Siren of Borderlands 4. A through line through every game is the Siren Vault Hunter. In universe, these are characters capable of immensely powerful magic, easily recognized by their massive, detailed, and distinct flowing tattoos. Vex's Siren powers are super unique compared to the previous Sirens of the series as well, as not only are her tattoos purple, which in itself is very unusual for the Sirens we've had, as for the most part, all Siren tattoos have been blue, aside from the red one on Troy in Borderlands 3, which is the way it is for a specific reason. Which then has me interested to learn a lot more about Vex and why she is the way she is. But for those who just want to know what she actually does and how she functions, her Vault Hunter trait, which is a passive that affects her overall gameplay, is called Phase Covenant. This makes all action skill and melee damage match the elemental type of her currently equipped weapon. Like all Vault Hunters, she has 3 skill trees, each one tied to an action skill, and each tree then branches off into 3 further potential routes that you can take, leading to big, powerful capstone abilities. This means even from the combination of just action skills and capstones and augments, even ignoring all the passive bonuses in the trees along the way, there is so much potential variety for builds. Vex's first skill tree is called the Fourth Seal, and is all about the sort of necromancy side of Vex. The action skill tied to this is called Dead Ringer. This has Vex summon clone minions of herself, either the Spectres, which are the stationary minions with guns, or Reapers, which are mobile, melee-focused minions with giant size that also taunt enemies, taking aggro away from you. These minions lose escalating health per second, and through the rest of this specific skill tree, you can find various ways to heal the minions to counteract this and try to keep them alive and active as much as possible. The 3 branches offer a lot of specialization, with the capstone that excites me the most being Dark Pact. This lets you equip a second augment at the same time, which is quite fun in itself, and lets you hold the button down to fully heal all minions, give them all increased movement and attack speed, and during the effect, they don't lose health over time like they normally would, and they even have their health loss escalation reset when the Dark Pact effect ends. So basically, this is all about keeping as many minions up and alive as possible, which is a really fun archetype to me. There's also the Vexcalation skill tree. This is attached to her Incarnate action skill, which is the skill that transforms her into demon mode with the big demonic wings, and you gain access to the Eldritch Blast ability, which you can then fire with your offhand. This can have its cooldown reduced when you deal gun damage, so big explosive blasts that you can fire more frequently the more you hit things with your guns. The most exciting capstone for this one for me personally is called Heart Piercer. This makes Eldritch Blast lose its cooldown, but now it sacrifices your health whenever you cast it. It becomes a piercing wave that both does damage to enemies and heals allies, so basically the whole goal of this playstyle would be to build enough health regeneration that you can basically just spam these high-powered Eldritch waves, which sounds awesome to me. Then her third skill tree is called Here Comes Trouble, and is based around her Phase Familiar action skill. While the skill is equipped, you gain Trouble, who is the cool glowing panther friend, just passively as a minion. He even changes colors depending on your weapon element because he does inherit it through your trait. The active skill usage teleports him to a spot of your choice and buffs him into badass mode for a bit, which gives him a full heal and increased damage. The most exciting capstone for me on this one is called Double Trouble, which gives attacks from Trouble a chance to create an extra illusion of himself. So basically, a second Trouble. You can have 2 panthers, hence the name. Critical hits have double the chance of making this happen as well, and the illusion also becomes a badass when you use the active part of the action skill, so a proper Beastmaster archetype as well. Next up we have our next Vault Hunter, Rafa, the Exo-Soldier. He's all about high-paced gunplay. His passive trait is called Overdrive. This makes him enter Overdrive whenever an action skill is active, granting him increased movement speed and damage with all sources. So it's sort of a very basic cookie cutter applies to everything type of buff, which makes sense as his applications are quite varied. He's sort of the multi-tool Vault Hunter. His first action skill is called Apophis Lance, which gives you an offhand arm cannon that fires piercing shock blasts, tied to the People Person skill tree. This skill tree can change the way that the arm cannon works in a bunch of different ways, but my most anticipated version of it is through the Project Gorgon Capstone skill. This changes the Apophis Lance to instead just be a laser that passes through enemies and chains to other enemies as well, which sounds absolutely incredibly cool. Rafa's next action skill option is called the Peacebreaker Cannons. This activates automatically firing shoulder cannons, and the skill tree, called Remote Agent, is heavily based around just gun damage and gun boosts in general. From reading the descriptions, my favorite capstone for this one is called Double Auto Shoot, which replaces the cannons with shotguns on your shoulders that also have a ricochet chance on targets. And this branch of the skill tree has a number of ricochet bonuses, and something about the chaos of just mass ricocheting shotgun shots sounds extremely fun. The next action skill is called Arc Knives, and guaranteed, this will be a fan favorite, as it's leaning heavily into a melee-focused playstyle, which, especially with the new movement systems in this game, should be extremely fun to play with. While the skill is active, your guns are gone, they disappear, and you instead get these awesome arm blades that deal shock damage and apply marks to any enemy hit, which increases your damage done to them. If you press the action skill button while you already have the knives out, you do a big finishing move spin attack that hits all marked enemies and then end your skill early. For this one, we don't even have to get to the capstones to find something that really excites me, because there's the Dead Man Walking Augment in the base skill tree itself, which makes it so you don't lose arc knives when the duration ends. Instead, you just start to take damage over time, but you also gain overshield anytime you hit an enemy with the knives. So this basically is incentivizing a super fast-paced melee playstyle, where you try to hit enemies so frequently that you never exit arc knives and just stay melee literally permanently, which sounds awesome. Following that, we've got our third Vault Hunter, and at least aesthetically speaking, my personal favorite being an absolute beefcake Viking-looking dude, Amon the Forgeknight. The only survivor of a Vault monster attack, his entire life is dedicated to essentially removing every single Vault monster from existence, if he can. Well, of course, also being described as a warrior poet and having a warm personality, so I really dig his vibe, honestly. For his passive trait, this is called Forge Skill, and uniquely it has a different effect with each of his action skills, so I'll instead be talking about this and the way that it works with each action skill as we go through them. His first action skill then is called Onslaughter. When activated, this gives you constant shield regeneration, increased incendiary damage, and increased movement speed. If you press the action skill button while it's already active, you do a Rocket Punch, which is a forward dashing incendiary damage attack with AoE and stagger on it too. The Forge skill trait makes it so if you hold the action skill button down with this one equipped, you do an attack called Molten Slam, where you whip out a giant molten forge hammer and slam it into the ground for incendiary melee damage in a large area. The skill tree for this is called Calamity, and it has a lot of survivability and melee damage boost options. My favorite capstone and branching path for this one from the skill tree that we've been shown is called Stormcutter. This changes the Molten Slam to instead be a wave of shock damage fired forwards that restores action skill cooldown, increases action skill duration, and restores Ordinance cooldown for every enemy hit by the wave. The second action skill for Amon is called Scourge. This equips a Forge Shield in the offhand that absorbs all frontal damage. Any damage absorbed fills something called a Vengeance meter. When the meter is filled, it stops fully absorbing and only gives general damage reductions. But the Vengeance drains if you don't have any recent buildup, and if you press the action skill button while it is active, you'll shoot out a wave of cryo damage, which also consumes some of your Vengeance, which lets you then spend some of the buildup and gain the ability to absorb more damage. The Forge skill trait with this one makes it so when you hold the action skill button down, you deploy a wall that absorbs enemy projectiles, while also buffing any friendly projectiles that go through it too. If Scourge is active, this will also generate Vengeance, and any enemy near the wall takes damage over time as well. The skill tree tied to this is, of course, called Vengeance, and it's heavily cryo-based and also just generally super survivability-based too. The thing that I find most exciting in this skill tree is actually an augment called Molten Rebuke. This makes it so when you press the action skill button with the skill already active, you will consume all of your Vengeance and throw the shield out. It will then bounce off of enemies with more bounces depending on how full your Vengeance meter was when you threw it. And I love a good shield throwing setup personally, so this sounds awesome. The third action skill then is called Crucible, which is a skill with 3 charges. For each charge, you can throw a Forge Axe, and you can then pick it up off the ground to refund some of the cooldown, and the choices are a Flame Axe that does incendiary damage, or a Frost Axe that does cryo damage. damage, and any enemy hit by the axes is primed for a detonation. This happens either when they die, or if you hit them with a forged skill. The forged skill trait for this one is called Double Edge. Press and hold the action skill button to throw a twin forge axe, which is cryo damage on the way out, and then incendiary damage when it comes back in. Sort of like a piercing boomerang axe with 2 elements. The skill tree tied to this one is called Cybernetics, and the most exciting thing in this tree for me is a capstone called Snowmall. This replaces the forge skill effect with a twinned forge hammer instead of an axe that does cryo damage, but ricochets between enemies up to 3 times. For every detonation that you cause, you get an additional ricochet, which means that you can set up a big chain of detonation primers and then just fire off this and watch it bounce off of everything back and forth a ton, which just sounds like a lot of fun. Then we have our final Vault Hunter, Harlowe the Gravitar, which, as the name implies, her big deal focus is gravity, and actually technology to accomplish gravitational control. This character has not had their full kit of abilities and their full skill trees released officially yet, like the others so far, so our information on her is a bit more piecemeal. But there's still information out there to be had thanks to Game Informer. Her trait is called Entanglement. This is a debuff that you can apply with your action skills in various ways, but any enemy that has the Entanglement debuff then shares damage and spreads it to the other enemies that have the debuff too. 0 Point is her action skill that is a sort of psychic bubble that you see her put people into in some of the gameplay trailers we've seen so far. She can also actively slam them into the ground once they're in the bubbles, and any enemy that is hit by this attack is then caught in the Entanglement debuff as well. She also has a skill called Chroma Accelerator. This charges up a forward-facing explosive blast that applies entanglement to any enemy caught in the damage, and then her final action skill is called Flux Generator. This drops a mine on the ground that applies entanglement to any enemy that wanders into the radius. What I find the most interesting about all of this with this character is that she has a lot of archetypes or playstyle concepts that are usually tied to sirens, but in this game and with her, they're instead achieved through technology, which is a pretty neat shake-up to the existing Borderlands formula. That just about does it for today, everyone. An overview and sort of catch up on what is going on with Borderlands 4. What's new, what is announced, what's looking exciting, and then just a more surface level look at each Vault Hunter, their playstyle archetypes, and what to expect from them in the full game. I hope you've all enjoyed this, and I look forward to entering Kairos with you all on September 12th. Like if you liked the video, subscribe to the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time,
I'm the conductor of the poop train!
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.